The emergency meeting nobody recorded. It lasted less than 2 hours, left no transcript, and produced no announcement. Yet, when it ended, the trajectory of Europe's markets had quietly shifted. The danger was never made public. The response was never explained. And that was precisely the point. To understand why this meeting mattered, we need to look at how modern crises are prevented rather than resolved. Not all emergencies announce themselves with collapsing prices or failing institutions. Some emerge as alignment failures, moments when systems remain stable individually but drift toward collective strain. That is when intervention must occur before anyone realizes it is needed. The meeting took place against a backdrop of calm that felt increasingly fragile. Markets were functioning. Liquidity was available. Volatility was contained. Yet regulators across Europe were seeing the same pattern emerge in different places. Funding hesitation, collateral congestion, synchronized caution, nothing broken, nothing moving freely. Individually, these signals meant little. Together, they suggested something more dangerous than panic. Coordination risk, the possibility that, under moderate stress, multiple safeguards would activate simultaneously and amplify restraint across the system. No rule would be violated. No institution would fail. But motion itself could stall. Senior officials understood the risk immediately. Waiting for confirmation would mean waiting too long. Acting publicly would create the very fear they were trying to avoid. So they chose a third path, a closed-door meeting with no press, no agenda released, and no record beyond the decisions taken. Around the table were central bankers, supervisors, and market infrastructure leaders. The discussion was not about rescue. It was about sequencing. Which safeguard should move first? Which should wait? How to prevent automatic defenses from colliding if stress increased suddenly. What made the meeting extraordinary was its restraint. No new powers were claimed. No emergency measures were announced. Instead, existing tools were quietly realigned. Expectations were clarified. Timelines adjusted. The system was reminded how to breathe. When participants left the room, nothing had changed visibly. Markets opened as usual. Prices moved normally. And yet, beneath the surface, pressure had been redirected away from collision points. The emergency meeting nobody recorded did not stop a crisis. It prevented one from forming. And because it succeeded, most people would never know it happened. But its silence was its legacy. In modern finance, the most important interventions are often the ones that leave no trace at all. What followed the meeting was not action, but alignment. No instructions were issued publicly. No frameworks were rewritten. Yet across Europe's financial system, behavior began to shift almost immediately. Safeguards that had been preparing to activate simultaneously now moved with separation. Timing, not strength, became the instrument of control. Clearinghouses adjusted margin pacing internally, smoothing responses to minor volatility rather than escalating instantly. Central banks refined liquidity operations so access felt predictable rather than reactive. Supervisors signaled tolerance for flexibility where automatic constraint would have compounded stress. None of this altered rules. It altered expectations. Banks sensed a change before they understood it. Funding desks reported less friction. Collateral moved with fewer substitutions. Liquidity buffers remained intact, but hesitation eased. The system had not been told to relax. It had been allowed to. What made the shift effective was subtlety. Because nothing was announced, nothing needed to be defended. Markets did not test boundaries because none were declared. Participants responded to experience rather than guidance. Transactions cleared smoothly. Volatility remained contained. Confidence rebuilt itself quietly inside regulatory circles. The success confirmed a difficult truth. Coordination is most powerful when invisible. Public action invites interpretation. Private alignment reshapes behavior without forcing reaction. By intervening before stress demanded explanation, authorities preserved credibility without spending it. The meeting's impact became visible only in hindsight. Indicators that had been drifting toward constraint stabilized. Liquidity circulation improved. Risk remained priced, but it no longer threatened to synchronize defensively. The system regained optionality. What Europe demonstrated in that moment was restraint as strategy. Not every danger requires force. Some require choreography. Knowing when to act without being seen is a skill developed only through experience, and through recognition that systems fail as much from collision as from weakness. The emergency meeting nobody recorded left no document trail, but it left behind something more valuable. A reminder that prevention is not absence of action. It is action taken early enough to remain invisible. And as markets moved on, unaware of how close they had come to gridlock, Europe quietly added another lesson to its unwritten playbook. The real test came weeks later, when markets faced the kind of pressure that usually exposes hidden seams. External shocks rippled through global systems. Volatility rose. Funding costs edged upward. Under normal conditions, these signals would have triggered a cascade of automatic defenses. This time, they did not collide. Safeguards activated in sequence rather than in unison. Clearing requirements adjusted without forcing immediate asset sales. Liquidity facilities absorbed demand without becoming permanent fixtures. Banks tightened selectively instead of universally. The system flexed instead of locking. Inside institutions, the difference was palpable. Risk managers noted stress without alarm. Treasury desks planned days ahead instead of hours. Decisions regained hierarchy. Not every response demanded urgency. Time had been restored as a stabilizing variable. Markets reflected that composure. Prices moved, but with texture. Volatility carried information rather than fear. Liquidity did not retreat wholesale. Participants differentiated between risk and noise, a distinction that disappears when systems force identical reactions. Regulators watched closely, resisting the temptation to intervene further. The goal was not to suppress movement, but to observe whether alignment held under pressure. It did. The adjustments made quietly in that unrecorded meeting proved sufficient to prevent amplification. What became clear was how fragile coordination can be without intent. The system had not changed in structure. It had changed in behavior. By preventing simultaneous constraint, Europe avoided creating its own stress through overreaction. The episode validated a lesson learned across the previous decade. Modern crises are often manufactured by timing rather than magnitude. When protections stack too quickly, they generate the very instability they are meant to prevent. This time, Europe allowed the system to reveal stress gradually, and because it did, stress never became crisis. The emergency meeting nobody recorded did not remove risk from the system. It restored balance to how risk was met, and in doing so, it demonstrated that sometimes the most decisive actions are those that give systems room to respond rather than forcing them to react. That realization set the stage for the final outcome, one that would only become clear once the pressure had passed. When the pressure finally eased, there was no moment relief to point to, no announcement declared success. Markets simply continued, steadier than expected, as if the strain had never threatened to converge. The absence of disruption was the outcome. Inside policy circles, the episode was dissected quietly. What mattered was not the tools used, but the restraint shown. By choosing coordination over intervention, Europe preserved credibility it did not have to spend. The system learned without being taught publicly. Institutions adjusted their own playbooks in response. Stress planning began to account for interaction, not just intensity. Risk managers modeled sequencing instead of assuming simultaneous shock. The experience reshaped internal doctrine more effectively than any directive could have. The emergency meeting nobody recorded became a reference without a name, a reminder that prevention rarely leaves evidence, that stability is often maintained through timing rather than force, and that public calm is easiest preserved when action happens early enough to remain unseen. Europe did not escape danger because its system was invulnerable. It escaped because it recognized how close safeguards had come to colliding and stepped in before collision became inevitable. That quiet success carried a warning as well. The margin for invisible intervention is narrow. It requires trust, coordination, and discipline across institutions that rarely move in perfect alignment. When those elements weaken, silence alone cannot protect the system. The lesson endured beyond the episode itself. Not every crisis is avoided by strength. Some are avoided by humility. By accepting that even the best design systems need guidance when stress approaches from unexpected angles, the emergency meeting nobody recorded left no trace in history books. But its impact lived on in smoother markets, steadier confidence, and a deeper understanding of how modern stability is truly maintained. Sometimes the most important decisions are the ones history never sees. The